Hey gang, using the promo code MTGMudsta, one word, all caps, will get you 10% off orders of $10 or more at Flipside Gaming, Original Magic Art, and orders of singles at Multizone. If they don't have what you're looking for, you could check out TCG Player and use my affiliate link to help support the channel. Looking for a way to bling out your deck and not spend a fortune? Alter Sleaze can help with that, and you can help with the channel at the same time by using my affiliate link. Or, if you're looking to join the Goblin Gang, you can always support me through Patreon. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game is a bit special since I filmed it with my patrons. In addition to that, I've also got a brand new deck. I am playing my Ramos 5-color Mutate deck, keeping Migratory Greathorn, Hinterland Harbor, Blood Crypt, Steam Vents, Farseek, Boneyard Lurker, and a Dreamtail Heron. You may remember him from one of my earlier patron games, but Kyoji is back, playing Zur. He's got Prairie Stream, Tribute Mage, Talisman of Dominance, Entomber Exarch, Plains, and a Scarab Feast. Matthew is playing Ravos and Sakashima, keeping an Arcane Signet, Swords to Plowshares, an Island, a Swamp, a Plains, a Phyrexian Metamorph, and a Fleshbag Marauder. Matthew's husband Brandon has joined us, playing his Halana and Alena deck, keeping a Blasphemous Act, Apex Allosaur, Xenagos, Soul's Fire, Cathartic Reunion, Bonder's Enclave, and Temple of Abandon. I win the die roll and start us off. I play tap Steam Vents. Matthew plays a Swamp. Brendan plays a tap Temple of Abandon, scrying 1 and keeping it on top. Kyoji plays a tap Prairie Stream, passing. At the end of turn, Matthew uses Vampiric Tutor to go and find a card to put on top of his library, and loses 2 life. I draw and play a Hinterland Harbor. I then pay 2 for a Farseek, passing while searching. Matthew draws the card he tutored for turn, and he plays an Island and casts a Swiftfoot Boots. Brandon just plays a Command Tower and passes to Kyoji. Kyoji plays a Plains and casts his Talisman of Dominance. He then takes 1 tapping the Talisman for a black to cycle Scarab Feast and draw a card. I play a tap Blood Crypt and then cast Vadrock, passing. Matthew plays a Plains and he casts a Monastery Siege, picking Khans as the enchantment enters. Brandon plays a Bonder's Enclave, passing. Kyoji plays an Island and then takes another 1 from the Talisman as he casts Zur and passes to me. I play a Clifftop Retreat and then mutate Migratory Greathorn onto Vadrock. This lets me do both mutate abilities, which is silly, and then I get to cast from my yard Farseek thanks to Vadrock, and then also find a basic from the Greathorn's ability. I pass while searching for 2 lands. Matthew draws his 2 from the Siege and discards a card, pitching the Phyrexian Metamorph. He plays a Plains as his land for turn, and then casts an Arcane Signet. He then taps out for a Fleshbag Marauder, which effectively wipes the board. Brandon plays a Mountain and casts Hornet Nest, passing. Kyoji plays a tapped Remote Isle for turn and casts a Tribute Mage. He goes to find a 2-drop artifact from his library to put to hand and reveals a Fluctuator, passing to me. I play Dragonskull Summit and cast Ramos. I then drop my own pair of Swiftfoot Boots, but sadly don't have the mana to gear up my Transforming Dragon and have to pass. Matthew draws his 2 and discards a card. He then casts a Rhystic Study and follows up with a Brainstorm. He draws his 3 and puts 2 back, passing to his husband. Brandon plays a Forest and then casts Cathartic Reunion, paying the 1 for the study tax. He discards 2 and then draws 3, passing. Kyoji plays a tap Desert of the Glorified and then pays 3, which includes the 1 for the tax, for Fluctuator, and he passes back to me. I untap and draw. I play a Command Tower, and then paying the 1 extra, mutate onto Ramos a Glowstone Recluse. This gives Ramos himself a +1/+1 counter from the spell having 1 color, and then adds 2 more to Ramos from the Glowstone Recluse's mutate ability. I then equip the boots onto him, and swing him Matthew's way for 7. I then pass. Matthew draws his 2 from the Siege and discards an Austere Command. He then taps enough for a Phyrexian Arena, and that's it for his turn. Brandon plays a mountain and pays 4, plus the 1 for his study, for Halana. He then passes, and at the end of turn, Kyoji cycles Windcaller Avon to draw a card and gives the Tribute Mage flying until the end of turn as well. He then cycles the Drifting Meadows, drawing another card. Kyoji plays a Hollowed Fountain, taking 2 so it comes in untapped. He then plays out Astral Drift, not paying the 1, and Matthew draws a card. He then passes to me. I draw, and 5 mana goes into mutating Dreamtail Heron onto Ramos. This gives Ramos a +1/+1 counter from its own ability, then 2 more counters from the Recluse, before finally drawing me a card. I then remove 5 of his +1/+1 counters to make 2 of each color of mana, and I mutate for 6 Boneyard Lurker, paying the study cost. This gives me 2 more counters from Ramos, then 2 more from the Recluse, then I draw a card, and then I return to hand Vadrock from the mutates. Moving to combat, letting what mana is left fade, I go at Kyoji in the air with my ever-transforming Robot Dragon Insect Nightmare Beast Man Bear Pig, and he takes 9, and I then pass. Matthew's upkeep has him losing 1 from the arena, drawing from it, and then draws 2 from the siege, and has to discard a card. He then plays an island for turn, and brings out half of his commanders, playing Ravos. He then gives the flying shirtless fellow some new boots, and passes to Brandon. Brandon untaps and draws. He asks who else is afraid of Ramos, and there's a resounding yes from my other opponents. He then taps enough for Blasphemous Act, paying the 1 to deny his husband the draw, and with the wipe on the stack, once he gains priority, Kyoji cycles Cast Out to use the Astral Drift trigger. He exiles his Tribute Mage until the end of turn, and I respond as well, casting Golgari Charm, and choosing to give Ramos Regenerate, plus he gets 2 +1/+1 counters from seeing this spell. Matthew unfortunately does get to draw from this though. The board wipe then happens, with the Hornet Nest taking 13 damage, and Brandon makes 13 insects. He then pays 2 for a Scavenging Ooze, and Matthew draws. Brandon then passes, with Kyoji's Mage coming back at the end of turn. This lets him tutor for another 2-drop artifact, and he reveals Sundial of the Infinite, and then moves to his own turn. Kyoji taps 6, not paying the study cost for Zur. This has Matthew drawing a card, and Kyoji then passes. I draw and play an island. I mutate Vadrock onto Ramos, giving Ramos 3 +1/+1 counters from its own ability, then 2 from the Recluse, then drawing a card, then returning a permanent to hand which is the Great Horn, then I get to cast without paying the cost a spell that costs 3 or less. It's Golgari Charm, which I have give all creatures -1/-1 until the end of turn. I then mutate the Great Horn onto Ramos, doing basically all that again, plus getting to go and find a basic. The spell I cast with Vadrock again is Farseek this time around, and I go and find another Shockland to come into play tapped. I then use Ramos' ability, removing 5 counters to make 10 mana. I use some of that mana for a Pouncing Great Shark, not paying the study cost, and I bounce Zur back to Kyoji's hand. Responding to this, Kyoji cycles Vizier of Tumbling Sands. He cycles out Zur with the Astral Drift, and draws a card, plus untaps a permanent. I then do all of my other mutate triggers, such as adding counters, tutoring for lands, drawing a card, and casting a spell. Once all that's done, I then turn Ramos sideways to go Kyoji. He takes the hit, and gets knocked out with commander damage. Matthew loses 1 to the arena, drawing, and then draws 2, and discards a Thespian Stage to the siege. He plays another island for turn, and casts a Dark Ritual. That gets him 3 black mana, and it goes into casting Varagoth, Bloodsky Sire, and he then equips the boots onto him. He swings the demon at me, and pays the Boast ability as he attacks. I then take 2 while Matthew goes to find a card to put on top of his library. He suggests to Brandon not to pay the 1 for whatever spell he casts next, to help deal with my board state, and then pass his turn. Brandon plays a Forest for turn, and brings back out Halana, not paying the 1. This has Matthew draw a card, and we then see him casting Leadership Vacuum, which he has target me. This forces me to put Ramos back to the command zone, and I bin all of my mutate cards. Brandon then uses the Scavenging Ooze to exile the Recluse, gaining 1 and putting a +1/+1 counter onto the ooze, and passes to me. I draw and play a Woodland Cemetery. I tap enough to recast Ramos, and give him the boots once he resolves. I cast a Slippery Boggle, which has Ramos gaining 2 +1/+1 counters, and then swing Ramos at Matthew. With Matthew unable to block, and before damage, I put to stack a Boros Charm to give Ramos double strike. This gives Ramos 2 +1/+1 counters from the spell having 2 colors, and Matthew gets taken up by commander damage as well. At this point, Kyoji's also used Infinite Tokens to elaborate as to why my taking him out was a good move. Brandon plays a tapped Highland Forest. He then casts Xenagos and gives Halana the pump as he moves to combat. He swings her at me, and I block with my Boggle, and then let the Ooze go through. Before damage, Brandon exiles another one of my mutates with the Ooze, gaining 1 life, and then dealing 4 instead of 3 to me. I untap and draw. I play a Shivan Reef as my land for turn, and then mutate a Cavern Whisperer onto Ramos. This has Brandon discard a card, and Ramos gains another +1/+1 counter. I then cast Asceticism, giving Ramos another counter, and swing my dragon at Brandon. He takes the hit for 10, and I pass turn. Brandon casts Alena in his main phase, and then plays out a Timur Sabertooth. He moves to combat, giving Alena the Xenagos trigger, and making her an 8/7. He hits me for 8, and then passes to me. My turn has me changing Ramos again to hopefully find a form that'll help me win the game, and this time he mutates into a Cubwarden, making 2 1/1 cat tokens with lifelink. This also gives Ramos a +1/+1 counter, and forces Brandon to discard a card. I then swing Ramos at Brandon, forgetting that Halana has reach. He blocks with her, and I then pass turn. Brandon plays a Rootbound Crag for turn, and taps out to bring back out Halana, passing back to me. I draw and play a Plains. I turn Ramos sideways, going at Brandon. Brandon blocks with Halana, who has reach, but before moving to damage, bounces her back to his hand with the Timur Sabertooth. It gains Indestructible, which doesn't really matter as I pass my turn. Brandon recasts Halana from his hand, and then taps Alena for 3 red. He uses some lands to help cover the rest of the cost of a Flame Blast Dragon, and then moves to combat. He puts the trigger on the dragon, and goes at me for 10. He gets an on-attack trigger from the Flame Blast Dragon, and puts 2 into the X to deal 2 to me as well. With nothing else, he passes. I draw, and play a Swamp, which isn't super helpful, and pass to Brandon. Brandon untaps and draws. He plays a Mountain for turn, and moves to combat. He goes at me with everything, but first resolves the Flame Blast ability, tapping out to have it deal 10 to me. We then do some quick math, and even with blocks and my life gain, I'll still take enough to get taken out, and Brandon wins the game. Game review time. So today was very much a lesson of don't count your chickens until they hatch, since I thought I had this game all but in the bag. Considering I'd only recently built this deck, I was incredibly impressed with how Ramos performed. Mutate is a very fun mechanic, and I like that it makes you go tall as opposed to wide. It comes with its own risks, as you saw, and I lost a lot of mutate creatures when Ramos was forced back to the command zone. I definitely enjoyed it though, and I'm hoping to tinker with it some more. Kyoji's deck was actually based around one of Tomer's decks, which is Zur Cycling, and it had a budget, at least at the time of him writing it, of $50. We played a second game where I think the deck showcased itself a lot better, and I was pretty impressed with it considering its price point. Matthew's Ravos and Sakashima deck unfortunately didn't really get off the ground. It seems to run a lot of clone effects based on what he told me, but he really struggled with finding lands. Brandon's deck, on the other hand, didn't seem to have a land problem, and basically proved that going wide can sometimes be better than going tall. Things took a real turn once he resolved that Timur Sabertooth, since it allowed him to block my Ramos, and then bounce his commander back to hand so he didn't have to pay commander tax. Proved to be a way to keep me out of combat almost indefinitely. It's hard to say what I could have drawn into the deck to help me get out of the situation, but I think as soon as he resolved that Flame Blast Dragon, the game was all but over. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.